Hello everyone, in this week's episode, our regular content is lined up as usual. Later on, we go viral with Dr. Bunolo Mashishi. She tells us about the light at the end of the tunnel regarding possible medication for COVID-19. That doesn't mean you have to stop social distancing or washing your hands regularly. And she also tells us about the new regulations as our kids now get to go to school more frequently. Later still, we discuss how you can find our doctors as we take you through to the directory of our doctors that have run these streets ever since we began this beautiful journey with you. But first, I am Dr. K, and you are watching Ask Your Doctors. And secondly, February is supposed to be the month of love. Scientifically, we call it Reproductive Health Month. Our crew calls it, we're talking about birds and bees. You can call it whatever you want. I say, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things. Let's talk about sex. And you know how we roll, right? We look for the best in the business. And today we did no less because we went and asked a favor of acclaimed gynecologist, sexologist, and reproductive health specialist, Dr. Mpume, aka Dr. Gynae. Hi, Doc.
How are you, sir?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very well, Doc.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you for making the time. Yes, Doc. You know, on this show, to be young, gifted, and black, we aspire to inspire.
Yes.
I come from the Bundus. So there's a lot of black parents out there that are tired about the prospects of their children.
Right.
And I would like them to say, I'm watching them and there's hope for our kids.
Absolutely.
So now I would like you to tell us about your journey as far back as you can.
Right.
Because we aspire to inspire.
Sure.
And tell us why gynecology. And then you'll tell us how you evolved to sexology.
Sure. Dr. K, thank you so very much for having me and to our listeners and viewers. I am Dr. Mpume Zenda, as you have said. I am actually from the Bundes too, south coast of Port Shepstone. I always say to people, don't be fooled by the heels and the weaves. I know how to put on a bucket of water on my head, going humming your tears. Right? But for me, it started way back. My mother is a midwife by training and by profession. She's retired now. And surprisingly, my dad was actually in the reproductive space for animals, not as a vet, but as in our language. I learned how to look after people from my own household.
Okay.
And I've just always had the love to look after people, but more specifically when it comes to gynae, I must say it was really much inspired by my own experiences as well as a woman, and I realized there isn't enough information. We don't understand our bodies. There were a lot of things that I struggled with as a young girl, and as I went through medical school and kind of sifting out all the different specialities that I was not quite keen on, gynecology literally just glared at me. And I remember specifically being pregnant myself with my daughter, who's now 12 years of age, and with the woman who was pregnant. So we were both pregnant. I was doing antenatal clinic and she was consulting, and I thought, this is so cool. The only difference between her and I is that I did a bit of time at medical school, and I thought women absolutely love and need these kind of conversations where as clinicians we can just chat without making it too scientific, because when we empower people with the information and the knowledge that we have, it goes such a long way.
Okay. So before we go to sexology and your transition, I believe it's evolution.
Evolution, yeah.
Reproductive health, how much is your interest in that?
So when we often talk about reproductive health, especially with us clinicians, we're thinking more of the fertility, infertility space. But I think reproductive health, when you look at all the clinicians, I mean, you can go from, home-based healthcare workers who do, I wouldn't say rather the basics, they go into people's houses, to the nurses, the midwives who do a lot of basic clinical work in our clinics and so on. And then you start start going into the general practitioners, the gynecologists. You also then get fertility specialists and the work. So it's in layers, but everybody who is in the clinical space is a reproductive health worker. You know, we all have a share in it. And so mine was more aligned with women's health from a space of being, starting with being just a general practitioner into being a specialist as a gynecologist. And then the extension into sexology for me was the most natural thing when I recognized, particularly in our Black communities, how difficult it has always been for us to have those conversations in an honest, open, and yet still respectful and appropriate manner.
Even between partners.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we're
difficult.
struggling.
Let alone between us and our kids.
Oh yeah, we are struggling hard. But communication is a skill, and sometimes we need to be kinder to ourselves in saying we haven't grown up in society and community that has encouraged just how to communicate. Talk to your kids or your partner about normal things. We are constantly trying to tuck things under and hide and euphemism, and it's just like
shame. I have 3 kids. Daughter 14, son 19.
Ooh.
And my son, now that we're talking sexology, maybe it's my question to you. Maybe not a question, a comment. I tell him, listen, condoms, this is how we should use condoms and this. And you know what he says? 19. And what shocked me was his answer. He says, but my friends said they were trying to use condoms, and 2 of my friends have kids, and they say the condom's best. Before I told him the truth, I said, 19 kids, a same age group. I was shocked, and then I hope he was lying. I still haven't gotten down to the truth of it. But I tell him that I even posted on Facebook that, you know, the one lie that men speak about the most. And sometimes maybe even women. When you now have to account to your friends why you fell pregnant to a person that you didn't want to fall pregnant to, then they say, yeah, the condom best. I mean, I said 90% of the time we know we are lying. I mean, honestly.
Sure.
Anyway, I've got a flood of questions. This was our most popular clip on social media. And yes, guys, if you want to speak to us, if you want to speak to our doctors, please go to our website, go to our social media pages. They are all called askyourdoctors.co.za. Facebook, Instagram is where we got most of our questions. And please, to be discreet and to be able to have a safe space for all of us, please go to the DM. We will pick up all your questions from there so that you know that they are going to the right person. They are not going to the timeline where the public can view them. In any case, the flood of questions, okay? This is a show about the audience.
Yes.
And I've tried to polish some of the language they used considering the topic, but I'm sure you're used to this anyway. Why do you love educating people about sexual health? This is a question from the audience, so I'll be reading it from here.
Sure. I know the difficulties.
You already told me a little bit.
Yeah,
so I know. Rush over it.
Yeah, I know the difficulties, and I've seen the difficulties with us communicating. And I thought very often as clinicians, we want to educate other clinicians. We go to conferences and so on, but we never filter down the information to the understanding of people who haven't necessarily been in the medical space. And we all know knowledge is power, and if we can empower our people, we do better as a community.
Important point. I do a lot of social media in dentistry. I tell my clinicians, do not show us your best x-rays. Do not show us because you're not talking to us, clinicians. You're talking to the audience.
The people, absolutely.
You know? And what about a job keeps you interested in helping people? I think some of the questions will be redundant, but let's indulge the people.
You know, always it's the cliche of do what you love and love what you do. I just fell in love with women's health. I think part of it is because I'm a woman, so it's constantly not just teaching or educating other people. It's teaching myself. It's learning about myself as well. And so I've never been bored, no matter how tired I am. 3 a.m. calls, deliveries. It's still the best thing that I do. Do what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Absolutely. Yeah. Obstetrics, you do that? Yes, 100%. You're not afraid of lawsuits and stuff? I always say practice with good ethics, practice with being humane, be transparent, and I mean, we've got things in place that kind of protect us. And when you look at the lawsuits themselves, very often people file lawsuits when they have felt unseen, unheard, and ill-treated. I believe when you create a safe space and an environment where people can trust you as a person, even when things go wrong, because we know that happens. Even when things go wrong, you are able to communicate in a manner that a person can say, "Mara ngiyamazi udokotela wami, ubengeke azangilimaze purposely." And I think that's something we don't do well as clinicians. We don't show people that we are human and that we care about them beyond just their payments and so on.
Two words I pick up from what you said. One, ethics.
Yeah.
Two, compassion towards your subjects, your
Absolutely.
patients, the society that you serve. Serve is another critical word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now another question says, an unhealthy sexual life.
Right.
Does it have implications regarding your general health?
Right.
And then I'll add to that, does general health have implications towards your sexual life?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, yes, yes. You know, when you look at, for example, whether it's the WHO definition, whether it is the World Sexual Health Organization in terms of the definition of what is sexual health, very often we have looked at sexual health from a perspective of eradicating, preventing, and treating sexually transmitted diseases or sexual health diseases. But it is also the well-being of your sexual life. It is the part that is probably only in the last 2-3 years has been added to the definition, is the importance of pleasure and satisfaction with your sexual life. So at any point where that is disturbed, it's a problem, it's an issue. You also then look at from a community perspective or social issues. Sexual health is truly healthy sexual health when someone can practice it with you know, the freedom to practice how they see fit without infringing on anybody's rights. It is a safe space. It's not a space where they feel violated. And so all those things, sexual rights, come to place as well as part of a healthy sexual life.
I have a funny question that comes to mind. You're talking about things being introduced lately.
Yeah.
Things like pleasure.
Yes.
One of the things that we have come to uncover is that women also need sex for pleasure. We thought, I'm saying society.
Yes, yes.
I see you get excited. Okay, I'm holding back. Behave.
Don't hold back. Throw all the punches.
So now, I see, is that one of the reasons why women can now, I mean, from your own point of view, women can now say, I can also get a husband and 3 boyfriends, and they can publicly talk about it. Or 2 husbands, or 3 husbands and 4 boyfriends.
Right. I think when it comes to people's decisions, that has to do with each individual's value systems, what they believe to be right. And again, remember when we speak about a healthy sexual life, there's a responsibility that comes with it. And whatever...
Speaking like a doctor now.
Yeah. Whatever a person...
I thought we were having fun, but it's
No, we are. I want to get to the point where it's saying, the spectrum of pleasure is, yes, whatever a person chooses, and at any point that another individual is infringing of it. Because let's look at things like genital mutilation that was done, and you get, like, you know, the cutting of the clitoris, sometimes even the labia and the works. That is a violation of human rights and sexual and reproductive rights. And it is also done with really not understanding. For example, I hope we are age appropriate. The clitoris has been designed purely and only for pleasure. All those 3,000 nerves are purely for pleasure. So if we don't understand that, and we are still vying on the patriarchal, sometimes very one-sided, that, you know, pleasure is for the man, it's not true.
We are age appropriate. Because this is 21, because I still
Right.
have children under 21 that I hope are not doing this stuff.
Oh!
Come on, I'm talking like a father now.
You're allowed to be thinking like a father, but
You know, I may not be scientific about the tongue.
right,
And later on, we'll talk about oral sex.
right.
And I think there might be a reason why both the tongue and the clitoris are the most sensitive
Absolutely.
areas of the body. But especially the tip of the tongue, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Now, what can people do with their general health so that it correlates to their sexual health?
Right. I always say it is a little bit of everything. You would know, as doctors, there isn't one blue pill that solves issues. So it is about lifestyle as well. What we eat does matter. Exercising does matter. The understanding that our bodies change. You know, when we look at, for example, women, from the time before puberty, your body is very different to when you are in your reproductive years. It's very different to when you get into the menopausal space. So even if it's just a very general understanding that your body will not function the same, and therefore you need to take care of it. Things you used to do at 20 years of age, party all night and go to work in the morning, you'll realize that at 30, 40, it starts to be a little bit tough. So looking after your health benefits your sexual life a great deal. And then you get the sort of like the softer features, like the communication, like your mental well-being. If you are somebody who's struggling with mental health, that impacts greatly on your sexual life. And vice versa, sexual life, if you are not satisfied with your sexual life, that has a great impact on your mental well-being, on how you feel. Sometimes even elements of confidence, self-esteem can be very much impacted. And then what we are mostly used and exposed to, which is the responsibility part, taking responsibility to create a safe space for yourself first and whoever you're engaging in your sexuality. So things like using condom, protecting against sexually transmitted diseases for yourself and for your partner or your partners. Those things will never go away. We will always have to be responsible in whatever we do.
And in my intro, I thought we were going to go wild.
Let us.
Now it's two doctors talking, and it's bordering on boring.
We have to be responsible, but let's go play.
Let me tell you, I speak for the men now.
Right.
But before I do that, there's a saying that says friends that pray together, meditate together, exercise together are a whole lot happier together.
Oh yeah.
So that goes to that thing was if the one is overdoing certain pleasures out there, smoking, drinking, eating junk, it might impact the friendship.
100%.
Yeah. And for the men out there, as a 50-year-old in another month, I might have Googled, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, long erection.
Right.
Okay? I'm talking for the men now. And when you go to one site that talks about any blue pill, it says the blue pill is not designed to give you a long erection.
Right.
It is designed to revitalize your blood vessels.
Absolutely.
Here, I'm just paraphrasing.
Sure.
And then it gives you an erection, sometimes in instances where erection has been a rare occasion.
Right.
Now, I'll go further to say that we were talking about fitness in Jan.
Right.
And we were saying you need muscles to move. You need muscles, and you need muscles to build muscle. Yes. And when you build muscle, you build the one muscle that matters the most.
Right.
I know it's a lot of smooth muscles in there, but yes, the one muscles that our guys are worried about.
Yes.
If you exercise, you build up testosterone. Right. If you build up testosterone, you get stronger physically.
Yes.
And that enables you to last longer.
Yes.
And next question.
It's a little bit of everything. It's the blue pill, it's the exercising, it's the eating well, it's the mental well-being, decreasing stress, and you can last for years. And you guys actually don't really have menopause like we do. So you are even at an advantage if you're looking after yourself well.
That's another thing, menopause.
It's sad when you look at, for example, more and more younger men are experiencing erectile dysfunction or episodes of not being able to perform as they used to. And when you actually look down at it, a lot of it is just lifestyle.
Yeah. None of our questions handle menopause. It's only fair you tell us, how does it affect?
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting when women talk about the clock or the ticking clock and how we're almost racing. Let me make sure I've got my children on time. It is time, and there's nothing really we can do to stop it. All the things we've spoken about from a lifestyle perspective, they help you age well, but you can't stop the decrease or the decline of especially the estrogen in your body as a woman. From the age of 35, that starts to decline, and how it will affect you. It affects us, one, from just psychological and emotional perspective in terms of the fog. You start having that fogginess in your memory, but more specific, things like hot flushes, things like you are not going to be able to be reproductive again. So have your children before you menopause, obviously. Things like sexual health are often overlooked, but you find women experience dryness, which then causes painful intercourse. So those are the things that we really need to flag out and say, it's not okay. Your sex life doesn't have to go into a dwindle just because you have menopause. There's medication out there that can help. Things like just struggling with urinary tract infections because of menopause is a big deal. And if women don't know that there is help and those things, it can really impact one's quality of life and impact the partner as well, because now if it's painful, I'm going to be like, hey, Baba, I've got a headache. Now you are infringing on the quality of the sexual life.
And I walk around with analgesics, painkillers, headache tablets.
The analgesic for that kind of headache is it's called emotional care. Emotional care for that person.
Granted. And men do get menopause too. Anything you can say about that? So
they will relate to it as, they relate to it as andropause. It is just a general decline. As men age, their testosterone will also start to decline. But like I said, it's unlike a woman where it's like once you've menopause, the factory is closed completely. With men, you can actually still reproduce, and it only takes you looking around a few of our elders and seeing they've been.
There.
No. I'm just saying we've been able to see men be able to reproduce, especially with a younger egg that allows you still to. So it's not as detrimental as or as final as how it is with women. And like I said, a lot of lifestyle, a touch of testosterone, and you're good to go.
I said my age before, and if there's any takeaway for men from this show, from my perspective,
right,
is that one of the reasons I go to the gym is the sequence that I told you about.
Right.
Fitness, and I'm very sickly, so right. I fend off diseases by eating better and trying to gym.
Absolutely.
But I'm telling you, the main reason is for the engine under the hood.
Yes. In fact, you spoke about something interesting when you said the blue pill was actually initially, when they did the trials, it was not being designed for erectile dysfunction. It was designed for cardiovascular function, improving cardiovascular function.
I know
and then we just noticed, it actually helps there. And so one of the things that it's quite interesting we learn is that as soon as a man you start seeing difficulty with erection, especially if you're not eating well, exercising, it's actually a telltale sign that you are minutes away. Well, not minutes in real time, but you are just away from a heart attack. Because it is the vessels that are affected. And I love it because it is probably one of the best incentives that gets our guys to get things sorted.
Yeah. Dr. Minga says to me, we use the blue pill in small doses, sometimes to revitalize your blood vessels generally, over a certain period.
Right.
Safe to say that he once prescribed me one of them when he was supposed to write one of my allergy medicines. And I get to the pharmacy, the guy at the local pharmacy.
Doc, it's okay. You can say you just needed a little bit of a push in the right direction.
He says to me, the guy says, Doc, your tablets you want 30, but I think we only have stock for like 6 or 7 in the pharmacy. I said, what are you talking about? He's shy. The guy is like saying, dude, is it that bad? I mean, I'm sorry, we can't help you. And then I checked the prescription the old man wrote, and I said, what is trying to suggest about my... Anyway, back to the audience. I'll just summarize the question.
Sure.
Anything significant about... we assume this question is from a male partner that's commenting about yellowish and smelly discharge, briefly.
Right. Very briefly.
From a female partner.
From a female doctor partner, I think it's important for both women and men to understand that the vagina, which is the inside, right? The outside is the vulva, the inside is the vagina. The vagina is not meant to be dry at any point. And because women, unlike men, are cyclical, which means at any time of our cycle, our discharge will change color, will change thickness because of the hormonal orchestra that's happening. It will not be the same. Of course, especially just before the period, during the PMS phase, you get a little bit of a shift in the pH, and that's when sometimes your partner can have a more thickish white. It almost looks a little bit like cottage cheese. That's because of just an overgrowth of a yeast infection. Okay. That's not a sexually transmitted infection. It's just a shift in the pH. Also, what happens is that if there is an overgrowth of bacteria, they may get what you call bacterial vaginosis, and that may have a tinge of like a fishy smell. It's not that deep, guys. If especially things are...
Nothing is dirty.
It's not dirty,
It's a condition that we all go through now and then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you are keeping things safe between you and your partner. And then also after the period itself, by the way, there's nothing with crossing the Red Sea, guys. Please, there is absolutely nothing wrong with sexual intercourse during a period. But even after a period, you'll find that because of the reaction of menstrual blood, and blood just in general, blood doesn't smell very kosher, no matter where it's coming from.
So when you're pulling a tooth, the smell of the blood.
Exactly. So it will have that slight of a tinge. And I always say, please be kind in how you address matters, because very often it's a non-medic with another non-medic, and she just feels square about herself and thinks something is wrong, and that can really impact someone's self-esteem, especially. Power dynamics play a role in relationship as well. So a yellow discharge, as long as it's not copious amount over and above what you are used to, as long as it's not causing other issues like itching, and if you are concerned, baby, yes, that's the most kindest thing you can do, and caring thing you can do.
And when you get to the doctor, both of you can sit and say, Doc, is it possible this could be transmitted to the man and then back to the woman, and then, you know, or whichever group of sexual partners we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And regarding yeast, guys, men do have yeast in their bodies. Yeah. Yeast does not grow in the vagina, it grows in the tummy. And by the time it shows up everywhere else in the body, there might be an imbalance that begins in the tummy. And if you drink beer, you eat a lot of bread, you eat a lot of sugar, you are just exacerbating the situation. So sometimes the yeast comes from the man.
Yeah,
I may not be an expert on this.
Oh, no, it's very true.
Yeah. Well, in any case, men, I just mentioned it.
Right.
Yeah, but someone said, with men, what is the normal color of semen or smell? Is there anything to be made about it?
Generally not. You know, it's a very sticky. Usually they will ejaculate at least about 3 to 5 mils at a time,
depending on the age.
That I just want to say that the amount of semen is not an indicative of how good the orgasm or the climax was. Right. Ejaculation is actually just a physiological exit of ejaculatory fluid.
Besides, it's the end, man.
It's just the end. Yeah. There's nothing to it. But something that sometimes women will complain about is that it's got a bit of a burning sensation. Yeah. And that's because, one, during intercourse, there's a lot of friction. So you may be a little bit raw, particularly as a woman.
Lots of friction right
Lots
there.
of friction. But also the pH of a woman sits at about 3.5 to 4.5, which is quite acidic, as opposed to semen, which is quite alkaline, and it sits at about 7. So maybe that can cause that. And I always say, get up, clean up, make sure you pee and drink lots of water, just so that you're not affected as much by the ejaculatory, by semen.
Diminishing arousal, either way.
Right.
What can you say about that? When someone doesn't get aroused, like...
Right. It's actually quite a lot more common in women. And I often say...
We know.
We always start...
But I'm selfie.
I love Dr. Professor Shinga Mtambira, urologist, good friend of mine, and we're in this, we're in this space together. And he always says something interesting. He says, an angry man can have sexual intercourse, but an angry woman ain't gonna happen. You're not getting anything inside anything as long as you haven't fixed, the tab that I've been asking you about. So women...
Is it that like trivial?
It's not that it's trivial, it's that we are wired differently. Right. First of all, from a physiological perspective, men have got about a 10 times more testosterone, which is actually the hormone, including the dopamines, that trigger desire. So you'll find also women don't have as much what you call spontaneous arousal, which is I think about it and I start experiencing it. I call it microwaves for men.
So that's where the Snoop something comes from.
The what?
Snoop something.
What's
men are Snoop what?
I say men are like microwaves and women are like coal stoves. You have to let that coal go red first before you think about doing anything. And unfortunately, a lot of guys still don't take foreplay seriously. They think it's just the before, the real thing. And I say, guys, no. For us, it's not inside, it's on top. And if you can get foreplay right, 80 to 90% of women will have an orgasm just on clitoral stimulation. But also, I spoke about for a lot of women, it's also an emotional thing. And it doesn't just benefit the woman, it benefits the man as well. If you spend more time just connecting with your partner, if you spend more time on foreplay, and you also experiment around out of the box, put penetrative intercourse out of the equation, if you can, and you will actually realize that you last longer in bed, your orgasms are more intense and more pleasurable, but most importantly, you enrich your relationship in terms of the connectivity. So you're speaking about things that diminish. So relational things will diminish. Age will diminish the libido, or will impact the libido. We spoke about menopause and so on. Things like illness, general illness. It could be things that are related to the reproductive organs, that pain in particular will most definitely impact someone's libido. But also things like, for example, diabetes. Those are the things that will impact how someone foresees and their interest in sexual intercourse. Mental health issues are big. So either diagnosed or even, and you find this a lot in our community where people are not diagnosed with things like depression, anxiety, but even those that have been diagnosed, the medical treatment of mental health issues, SSRIs in particular, they are ones that really can impact on the libido. And then the lifestyle, feeling confident about yourself. I always say to women, just go for a run, and then come back home and start cooking at home. You will see flames, because something about looking after yourself impacts your confidence, and you show up as your best self to your partner. And I always say, women, please initiate.
Woman. Tell me, this probably touches a little on the climax. Ladies, how the climax takes longer. Generally, can we tell the public that yes, it takes longer? You've already touched on it.
Yes.
The arousal, the foreplay, And they might climax faster if we do the initiation
The nice
right.
things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Anything you want to say?
I want to actually more say to the women, it is so important for you to know what also makes you tick so that you can educate your partner well. I always say you have to be a great teacher. He doesn't know. His stuff works on, you press a button and bzzz, let's go, right? So if he is not wired that way, human mind is very silly. We are biased to what comes naturally to us. Men may not necessarily understand why we love cuddling, why we love touch, why we love the long foreplay. Explain to them, explain and say, baby, nangi thanda kanje, ngithanda kanje, ngithanda kanje. And if it is a man who knows and trusts himself, he will not be offended by that. He will say, all right, baby, I've heard, I am a good listener, right? So foreplay is absolutely important for the woman. But that said, think of sex or sexual intimacy as food. Sometimes you want a quick snack, and I always say to women, you don't have to be hungry for you to serve. So sometimes a quick snack doesn't have to be like a long-winded, foreplay that takes 20 minutes.
So nothing wrong with 2-minute noodles? No?
Absolutely not, but that can't be the main meal. 2 minutes noodle can't be the main meal every day. You can't be a 2-minute noodle.
Never mind, it's fine.
Mix it up.
Michael Douglas is known to have said that he thinks his love for oral sex might have contributed to his subsequent throat cancer.
Right.
So let's demystify it. Let's be scientific as well as a little simple about it. Is there a link between oral sex, human papillomavirus, and throat cancer?
100%. There definitely is. It is a pity that because of the impact on cervical cancer, human papillomavirus, sometimes I joke and say it's like the sexually transmitted flu. It's the flu of the group of sexually transmitted infections, because it is so easily transmittable, probably more than any other, and we pass it on to each other all the time. But the people who carry the biggest burden of disease, and it's telling in our guidelines of how there is such a focus in preventative measures to prevent cervical cancer. But that doesn't mean human papilloma only affects the cervix. It also affects the vulva. It affects the anal region. It affects, as you are saying, when we do oral sex, it affects oropharyngeal cancer, men even penile cancer, right? So it is much lower in percentages. The burden of disease particularly is more susceptible to the cervix. And that's why the conversation is always more on cervical cancer. But to your point, absolutely yes. So just like any other sexually transmitted infections, please make sure you are safe in all your practices.
Okay, safe meaning safety measures? Wearing a condom when doing oral sex?
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
No. It's true. It's and the reason I'm a little bit
shy,
no, I'm not shy. The reason is because a lot of people think pregnancy is the worst thing. They think if we have anal sex, then we can forego condoms. If we're having oral sex, we can forego condoms. If I am on a long-term contraceptive, we can forego condoms. And even when you look at the media space, we've almost forgotten about HIV, and yet the increasing number of infection continues, particularly amongst the young, the adolescents. So not just the condom, but being responsible with who you are with, and let's go check check. Are you on medication? Prophylaxis, pre and post. Those are things that still should be big alarms in our conversations.
Quite commonly, newly acquainted partners, when they want to stop using condoms, some are responsible to a certain extent. They say, let's do an HIV test. Are you on the pill or whatever?
Right.
But we have to let the public know out there that actually that's also accompanied by a general survey of all the STIs.
Right.
And it can be done with one the same draw of blood that on the day,
Yes.
or doing swabs and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For both men and females?
For both men and females. And awukwazi ukuchecka you can't check ngami. You can't say how umuntu wami ucheckile negative. Kushuthi nami negative.
Okay. We've covered a little about STIs, a little about throat cancer. And we go viral now to our virologist, Dr. Bunolo Mashishi. She goes ahead to tell us about a possible light at the end of the tunnel with medication for COVID. Right. And then she's going to give us a rundown on the new regulations. Over to you, Bunolo.
So you may have heard that COVID regulations have changed in South Africa. If you're not, you can find this information updated on the SA coronavirus website. But just looking at the pros and cons, this is really such a difficult question, really, because it's about balancing how bad the virus can get and how bad it can make people get sick, but also looking at issues of economic recovery and public health policies. So all these have to be balanced together. And so the government took the best decision they thought was best for the country, and these regulations have changed. So if you came into contact with someone who tested positive for COVID and you don't have symptoms at this time, that means you no longer have to stay at home, isolate or quarantine. But unfortunately, if you have symptoms still, you have to stay at home and isolate for a period of 7 days.
3 things, Doc. People have fallen pregnant without penetration.
Yes.
So today's show is about reproductive health.
Right.
It's not just the fun one that we had last week.
Yes.
And that's number one.
I'm so glad you talk about puberty for both girls and for the boys. I think one of the biggest error is that we often want to educate the girls, but who do they end up dating for the majority? It's the boys. So if we are not normalizing the conversations for both boys and girls.
What we say is a bit of weight loss improves self-esteem and
Yes.
physiologically improves libido. Yeah.
And improves sperm count and improves and the quality of your eggs as a woman.
Welcome back, guys. I am Dr. K and you are watching Ask Your Doctors. I am still in the graceful presence of Dr. Gynae. She's a sexologist. The topic has been hidden when I've lost my line of thought. Sexologist, acclaimed gynecologist, and a friend of the show. So we will finish off with 1 or 2 questions. Doc, we ended up where we were talking about human papillomavirus.
Right.
And apparently there's a vaccine that's now being introduced around 15-year-olds.
Right.
You said, you and I know it's both for boys and girls.
Yes.
Yes. Now someone says here, can you tell us why, the vaccination?
Right. So the vaccination is quite important because of the scourge of cervical cancer. And
Okay.
if we can vaccinate at a young age, you want to vaccinate primarily those who have not been exposed to it. But we know that the efficacy of the vaccine is still quite useful up until 45 years of age. So for both men and women, it should be. I do believe that part of why we focus on the women again, the vaccines are started at even earlier than 15, 9 years of age. That's just because you get the best in terms of antibody and the herd community that you start to build. So that's the reason why. But from a perspective of especially private health, if you can get your hands on it, please do make sure. If you're less than 45 years of age, man, woman, please get vaccinated. As a man, you are protective of your partner when you get vaccinated, and all your partners that you will ever have, even if you're still at a young age. So it's this thing that it is only for the girls. That is probably just guidelines that say, who do we need to target the most to get the most out of the vaccines from a budget perspective when it comes to our health policies, because it is an expensive exercise, but it is also one that we cannot ignore, and important to say, where do we put in our resources where we can get the best out of it from public health perspective.
That answers one of our audience questions about, does a 30-year-old still need to vaccinate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
It's been a pleasure, Doc. A pleasure in many ways. Tell me, how do our audience get a hold of you in any way possible?
Right. So first things first, in terms of consultations, I am full-time based at Morningside Mediclinic. I do obstetrics, gynae, and sexology there. But we've also expanded our practice from a perspective of information sharing to our social media page, particularly our Instagram and Facebook, where we are Dr.Gynae. We share a lot of particularly women's health and sexual health tips and information there, so you're more than welcome. And on our DMs, you will also be able to get either our numbers, our email addresses, if you just give us a shout on our DMs on Instagram.
Awesome. And go to our website, you will find all our experts there. Remember to click find a doctor, and once you are happy, try and go to YouTube, or as you are watching on YouTube, remember to click subscribe. Doctor, it's been a pleasure.
The pleasure has been mine.